Well, guys, I don't really talk about this topic all that much, though I kind of do, but not as much as I probably should, mostly because it's just so depressing. And the conversation is so in need of nuance, and when you try to talk about it with nuance, people get mad at you. Because it's like a big culture wedge issue, and people do that on those culture wedge issues. And this is one of the few situations in which there actually is nuance to what's going on. The right has kind of gotten so insane these days that there's no nuance in politics anymore. It's literally black and white. Like the Republicans and the GOP and the things they support and stand for are literally just evil now. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like Trump is promising to defund all public schools that require vaccines as if that's something America needs. This is just evil. It's just evil. It's just using ideology to hurt people so that you can look like you got a win from the people with the ideology you want to support you. Now, when it comes to Israel, though, it is actually a nuanced issue. Not about whether or not Israel is right to do the war crimes they're doing, particularly against children and the infrastructure of those that they're, in conflict with. There's no nuance to that. It's completely wrong. What I mean to say is that a lot of people talk about it like Israel is just just randomly swinging at everybody in the room for no reason. Like, if you ask a lot of people who are, against Israel, they do seem to genuinely think that. And I want to be very clear. I am very aware that there are innocent, good people who are just civilians in Israel who are absolutely under attack by Iran and Hamas, and there's plenty of other parties that frankly want to kill everyone in Israel, particularly the civilians. When Israel gets attacked, it's usually the civilian population, and while the Iron Dome and other defense systems that have been built are pretty good at diverting those attacks and preventing civilian death in Israel, they aren't perfect, and they're getting less perfect by the day. So, civilians are innocent on both sides of this thing. And that's important to keep in account, right? You've got to remember that Israel does have a population that is regularly attacked to the extent that people die, and there is a need for their government military to protect its people. But what they're doing is far from protection. What they're doing is, let's just read this story, and I think it'll get across what I'm talking about pretty clear here. Like, there's a very frankly thick line between defending your civilian population and what led to this. 40 countries strongly condemn Israeli attack on UN peacekeepers. At least 5 members of the UNIFIL peacekeeping mission have been wounded in South Lebanon in recent days. 40 countries contributing to the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Lebanon on Saturday condemned recent Israeli attacks on the mission and called for an investigation of the incidents. At least 5 peacekeepers in the mission, known as UNIFIL, have been wounded in recent days amid escalating violence in southern Lebanon after Israel launched a ground invasion against the Hezbollah militant group. The 40 countries said they strongly condemn recent attacks on UNIFIL peacekeepers, according to a statement issued Saturday. Quote, "Such actions must stop immediately and should be adequately investigated," they said. Quote, "We consider UNIFIL's role as particularly crucial in light of the escalating situation in the region," the country said in the statement, which was published on X by the Polish mission to the UN. You know what's crazy about this? This is once again another situation in which Netanyahu and Israel's government are almost pure reflections of Russia and Putin. This really reminds me of when Dylan volunteered to do aid work in Ukraine. Dylan Burns, if you guys don't know who that is, he is a lefty Twitch streamer who has focused heavily the last few years on on-the-ground coverage of the war in Ukraine. A lot of this coverage he has put his life in pretty serious danger to produce. And so he is very dedicated to his reporting, and that's obviously very deserving in respect. Now, he also volunteered for aid work, and after the Russians bombed a dam in, I forget which region it was. This was like a year ago, so I've forgotten a lot of the areas and stuff like that. I apologize, but if you've kept up with it, then you might know what I'm talking about. Russians bombed a dam. This entire low-lying town that was reliant on the dam holding back water to keep it from flooding proceeded to flood. A lot of people had already evacuated Cherson, thank you, or Kherson. A lot of the people there had already evacuated because the region was under constant Russian attack, which meant a lot of them had to leave their pets behind, unfortunately. And those pets were now being left in houses and on porches and cages and tied up to, like, posts as a massive flood came in to this town. So Dylan was going in to help people who were still there evacuate, and mostly evacuating pets. It was mostly evacuating pets. Russia proceeded to, multiple times, by the way, this has happened not just this time, but multiple times, straight up airstrike Dylan's position. One of the volunteers that Dylan was working with was literally hit and had to be taken in for medical care before they bled from their gut due to shrapnel. It hit that close. This really does remind me of that, and how Russia then lied and said that that was a combatant team, despite the fact that everyone knows those were unarmed volunteers and journalists. Russia just says, nope, no, we were attacking combatants. Nope, they were combatants. They just deny it, because who cares? Like, it really is just almost one-to-one Russia and Israel, isn't it? The statement also urged, quote, the parties of the conflict to ensure the security and safety of the peacekeeping personnel so that they can continue their work of mediation and support for peace and stability. Spain, France, and Italy had already slammed the attacks. Now, here's the thing. Here's another part of the nuance, though. It's not as simple as Israel is just trying to defend its people. You might interpret me saying Israel has to defend its people from the attacks they receive as that, but that's not what I'm saying. What Israel's doing is not adequate defense. It's not. They are outright on the attack in such a way where, like, to be fair, Netanyahu and a lot of the nationalists in Israel want to annihilate their enemies. They want to genocide their enemies. They want to. They want to genocide the Palestinians in Gaza, for example. Like, it's not as simple as there is valid reason for Israel military action for the purpose of defense. While they do have that justification for a defense purpose, they're using that justification to go so far as to push their personal desire for straight-up genocide. Because there are absolutely parties involved in Israel here who want and are trying to achieve genocide. The Israeli nationalist movement absolutely wants that. UNIFIL said that its facilities have been repeatedly hit and that Israeli forces had deliberately fired shots at the mission's headquarters in the town of Nakura. The fact is, Israel doesn't like the UN peacekeeping missions because they don't want peace. Israel wants to have these attacks as an excuse to wipe out groups that they consider inferior and on their land. Israeli nationalists are basically Nazis. They're just Jewish. Like, there's not much to say there, you know? Like, nationalism is evil no matter who practices it. Breaking news, I guess. Israeli forces asked UNIFIL to withdraw from some of its positions, but there was a unanimous decision to stay in the area. UNIFIL spokesperson Andrea Tenenti told AFP on Saturday. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urged the UN peacekeepers in South Lebanon to evacuate the region immediately because he doesn't want them to be bringing peace, of course. In a video statement, Netanyahu told UNIFIL to move its personnel out of harm's way because they're the harm, claiming that their presence in the region made them hostages of Hezbollah. And you know what Israel likes to do to hostages? Israeli tanks later Sunday destroyed the gate of a UNIFIL base in Ramya and forcibly entered, leaving after 45 minutes, according to a statement by the UN mission. Israeli forces then fired several rounds 100 meters from the camp, causing skin irritation and gastrointestinal effects in 15 peacekeepers after smoke entered the base, it said. I don't think that, like, the gun smoke was making 15 people, like, so sick that it was, like, a huge deal. But, like, yeah, Everything else here that's been described has been, like, beyond the pale, obviously. UNIFIL was established as an interim force in 1978 to confirm Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon and help restore peace in the region. In 2006, wow, so this entire, like, group has roots back to something that like Netanyahu and Israeli nationalists would hate, which is the idea of bringing about peace in the region and not allowing Israel to do genocide if their nationalist parties want to do so. In 2006, when war broke out between Israel and Hezbollah, its mandate was expanded to monitor the cessation of hostilities and support the Lebanese army. The force counts more than 10,000 troops drawn from 50 countries, as well as about 800 civilian staff. Dude, did you guys see the, I can't show it on stream. That's the thing. Did you guys see the footage coming out of Lebanon? Of what Israel did to civilian populations that they've been striking? It really stuck with me because it looked a lot like a modern iteration of what the eruption of like Mount Pompeii did to the people in the town of Pompeii. Like, the photos are literally one of the photos is of what is very clearly a child that has been burnt to a literal crisp. Like, when I say burnt to a literal crisp, that's why I made the comparison to the people in Pompeii. Like, basically an ash-constructed form of a person. It's really rough. It's really rough to see, but frankly, not much to complain about when there are people who are actually going through it, you know? Like, I don't have much to complain about seeing it when there are people being it, you know? Christ, I know what you mean. Yeah. Listen, it's why this situation is so hard to talk about, because when I talk about the fact that there is nuance and that there are attacks on Israel's population, that Israel has a right and responsibility to defend their populace from, people immediately say, wait, are you making excuses for Israel? When literally everything else I have to say is condemning Israel's war crimes and attempts at genocide, because Israel has a genuine nationalist movement that wants to commit genocide, and that nationalist movement holds a lot of power. One participant in that nationalist movement is Netanyahu. So it's really rough to talk about, because I can't just outright say Israel is evil and should completely withdraw all military action whatsoever, because that's not the case. I don't think the Israeli civilians deserve to die. But at the same time, Israel's not acting in like this altruistic defensive way. They're using it as an excuse, it would seem, to engage in war crimes. And because nobody is willing to take off the kid gloves with Israel on the world stage that has any real, like, financial leverage over them, they just kind of get away with it. My ass is traumatized by being homeless, but at least I've never lost a family member to bombs. Yeah, Cammy Whammy, like, it's just a reminder that as bad as even, like, the worst of it can be in America, God, there are people in this world that are going through suffering that just... It hurts to imagine that kind of suffering. That's what empathy is, by the way. When I say that, like, kids haven't developed empathy, this is what I mean. Most teenagers and kids don't feel literal anxiety and pain in their stomach when they imagine the suffering that people that exist in this world are going through. Some do, but it takes a while to develop that, and that is what empathy is. That, like, uncontrollable negative feeling that you feel, that sensation you feel when you think too hard about the suffering people in this world are going through that aren't you. That's empathy. And unfortunately, it's what the Republicans lack, and it's what the GOP has, like, utilized, a lack of empathy, which is, frankly, it seems a learned skill these days. They've utilized that undeveloped empathy to build their main fundamental core supporter base. Anyway, there's not much else I have to say about this situation. I just figured I should probably talk about it because it's just another example of Israel being so blatant in their lack of care to even look like they are just trying to defend themselves, and that's it. I figured I ought to talk about it. People have also requested I talk about it, so hopefully you are now educated. If you do feel educated, consider leaving a like, if you haven't already, of course. Every thumbs up goes a long way to boost the channel and the algorithm no matter what you leave it on, whether it be a video, a VOD, or a stream. It actually forces YouTube to push my content and the algorithm out to more new viewers and helps the channel grow a lot really quickly. So I really do appreciate it. Every single one counts. You can actually compound that effect of positivity by dropping a comment down below as well. It helps a ton too. And you can also subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video, because believe me, if you don't do so, they will not tell you. Trust me, they won't. And of course, if you want to see more from me on other platforms, you can follow my social medias, linked down below in the description. And don't forget to join my fan Discord. It is actually the main hub of my community and totally free to join, and the link to join is down below, mind you, in the description. It is also where I host game events, call-in streams, and watch parties every week, and I announce all my new uploads and streams there, so if YouTube ends up bugging and not telling you about my activity on the website, then at least you've got my Discord to tell you, so I hope to see you there. Finally, though, if you feel like helping me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buying merch at the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, even if you're just a lurker, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again, and have a good one.